Welcome back to the Alibi Club, where every mystery is a case file waiting to be reopened. Tonight's story is not about heroes. It is not about a kingdom fighting evil, and it is not about love conquering darkness. Because the story you are about to hear begins with a princess who believed she was saving her people, only to realize she had helped destroy everything she loved. This is the story of betrayal, of loneliness mistaken for love, of rebellion disguised as freedom, and of a kingdom called Aramoor. The kingdom of Aramoor did not fall because of war. It did not fall because its enemies were stronger. And it did not fall because the king was weak. It fell because a princess opened a gate for the man she loved. For years, the people believed that was the truth. Songs were written about her betrayal. Mothers warned their daughters never to become like Princess Elira, the woman who chose love over blood. But kingdoms rarely die from a single choice, and love was never the real reason. Because on the night Aramoor burned, Princess Elira discovered something far worse than betrayal. The man she sacrificed everything for had never intended to save anyone. Not her, not the kingdom, not even himself. And by the time she understood the truth, the gates were already open. The fires had already begun, and the screams inside the castle walls could no longer be stopped. The kingdom of Aramoor stood above the sea like something carved from a dream. Its silver towers rose from the cliffs, shining against dark waters below. Massive stone walls protected the capital, while banners carrying the royal crest danced endlessly in the cold wind. Traders traveled from distant lands just to see its markets. Soldiers from neighboring kingdoms feared its armies. To the outside world, Aramoor looked eternal, but kingdoms often look strongest moments before they begin to crack. King Edric ruled Aramoor for nearly 30 years. He was respected, feared, and obeyed with the same intensity. The people called him the Iron King, not because he was cruel, but because he believed emotions weakened rulers. Order mattered more than kindness, control mattered more than love, and sacrifice mattered more than mercy. Under his rule, crime nearly vanished. Rebellions were crushed before they could spread. The kingdom became rich, stable, powerful. But fear has a strange way of disguising itself as peace. The people obeyed the king, yet whispered about him in private. Taxes increased each year. Soldiers patrolled villages more aggressively than before. Anyone accused of disloyalty simply disappeared. And slowly, quietly, resentment began growing beneath the surface of the kingdom like roots beneath stone. But none of this reached the royal palace, or at least, that was what King Edric believed. Because inside those enormous silver halls lived the only thing in the kingdom he could never truly control: his daughter. Princess Elira had grown up surrounded by luxury, but luxury is not the same thing as freedom. From childhood, her life had already been decided for her. Every lesson, every movement, every conversation was carefully controlled. She learned diplomacy before she learned friendship. She learned royal etiquette before she understood happiness. Even her future marriage would one day become a political agreement between kingdoms. And perhaps worst of all, she was always alone. The palace was full of servants, advisors, guards, and nobles, yet none of them truly saw her as a person. To them, she was a symbol, a future queen, a piece of the kingdom itself. No one asked what she wanted, not even her father, especially not her father. King Edric loved his daughter in the only way he understood love, through protection and discipline. He believed softness would destroy her, so he kept her distant from the world outside the palace walls. But isolation creates dangerous curiosity. and curiosity eventually leads people toward the very things they were warned to avoid. Every night, Elira would stand near the western balcony of the palace and look down at the city below. From that height, the streets looked alive in a way the palace never did. Music drifted upward from taverns. Lanterns flickered like stars across the markets. Real people laughed there, argued there, fell in love there, lived there. Meanwhile, inside the palace, every conversation felt rehearsed. Every smile felt fake. Every day felt exactly the same. Until the night she met the stranger in the garden. The royal gardens sat behind the palace walls, hidden beneath climbing ivy and ancient stone statues worn smooth by time. Few people visited them after dark. The guards rarely bothered checking the lower paths because no outsider could possibly enter the palace grounds. At least, that was what they believed. Elira first saw him standing near the fountain beneath the moonlight, a young man dressed in dark traveler's clothing, not a noble, not a guard, not someone who belonged there. For a moment, both of them froze. The prince, or rather, the princess, and the intruder stared at each other in complete silence, while rainwater dripped softly from the marble fountain beside them. The man should have panicked. Instead, he smiled. Not the nervous smile of someone caught trespassing, but the calm smile of someone who was never afraid to begin with. "You're not supposed to be here," Elira whispered. The stranger glanced around the empty garden, "And yet," he said softly, "here we both are." For the first time in years, something inside Elira shifted, not because of his face, not because he was handsome, but because he spoke to her like she was human, not a princess, not royalty, not a symbol, just a person standing alone in the dark. And without realizing it, Princess Elira took the first step toward the destruction of her kingdom. After that night in the garden, Elira told herself she would never return. It was reckless, dangerous. If the guards discovered an intruder inside the palace grounds, the punishment would be severe, not only for him, but for anyone who failed to report it. And yet the next evening, as darkness covered the silver towers of Aramoor, she found herself walking back toward the lower gardens again. Some part of her already knew he would be waiting there, and he was, standing beside the fountain exactly as before, calm and motionless beneath the pale moonlight. "You came back," he said. Elira crossed her arms carefully. "You sound surprised." "I am." "Why?" "Because people raised in cages usually fear open doors." The words unsettled her, not because they were cruel, because they were true. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The distant sound of waves crashing against the cliffs echoed faintly beyond the palace walls, while cold wind moved softly through the trees above them. Then finally, Elira asked the question that should have come first. "Who are you?" The stranger hesitated only slightly. "My name is Kael." No title, no family name, nothing else, as if the rest of his identity did not matter. "And how did you enter the palace grounds, Kael?" A small smile touched his face again. "That," he said, "is probably not something I should answer." Elira should have called the guards immediately. She knew that. Every lesson she had ever been taught screamed that this man was dangerous. But danger had always been described to her as loud and obvious. A sword, an army, a rebellion. Not this quiet, not this calm. Kael spoke softly, but every word carried confidence. He did not bow before her title. He did not flatter her. He did not seem impressed by the palace, the kingdom, or the royal blood running through her veins. And strangely, that was exactly why she wanted to keep speaking to him. Because for the first time in her life, she felt invisible in the best possible way. Not watched, not judged, not controlled, just seen. Over the following weeks, the secret meetings continued. always after dark, always in the lower gardens. And each night, the palace around Elira felt colder when she returned to it. Kael told her stories about places beyond Aramoor, crowded ports filled with musicians and thieves, villages hidden deep inside forests, cities where people could speak freely without fear of royal punishment. To Elira, those stories sounded almost unreal. Freedom itself felt unreal. "You talk about the world like it belongs to everyone," she once told him. Kael looked at her carefully. "Doesn't it?" She had no answer for that, because inside the palace, everything belonged to the crown, the land, the people, the soldiers, even her own future, especially her future. One evening during dinner, King Edric announced that ambassadors from the northern kingdom of Velmor would soon arrive at Aramoor. The moment Elira heard the name, her stomach tightened. She already understood what it meant: a marriage proposal. Political marriages were common among royal families. Love had nothing to do with them. Alliances mattered more than happiness. King Edric did not even look at his daughter while discussing it with his advisors, as if her opinion was unnecessary, as if the decision had already been made. Later that night, Elira walked through the gardens with unusual anger burning inside her chest. Kael noticed it immediately. "What happened?" "They're choosing my future for me again." Kael stayed silent. "My father wants me to marry someone I've never met," she continued bitterly. "A prince from Velmor, and will you?" Elira laughed softly, though there was no humor in it. "What choice do I have?" Kael stepped closer then, his expression unreadable beneath the moonlight. "There's always a choice." Those 4 words changed something inside her, because no one in the palace had ever spoken to her that way before. Choice, freedom, escape. They were dangerous ideas, and dangerous ideas spread quickly in lonely hearts. As the weeks passed, Elira began noticing things she had ignored her entire life. The fear in the servants' eyes whenever royal guards walked nearby, the silence that filled rooms whenever her father entered, the exhaustion on the faces of workers rebuilding sections of the city after harsh winter storms while taxes continued rising. Kael's words had altered the way she saw the kingdom, or perhaps they had simply opened her eyes to what had always been there. One rainy evening, Elira asked him directly, "You hate my father, don't you?" Kael did not answer immediately. Rain fell softly through the garden trees, while distant thunder rolled across the sea. Finally he said, "I hate what he's done to this kingdom." "That's not the same thing." "No," Kael admitted quietly. "It isn't." Then he looked directly at her. "But sometimes people become impossible to separate from the damage they create." The conversation stayed with Elira long after she returned to her chambers. For the first time in her life, doubt had entered her heart. Not doubt about Kael, doubt about everything else. And doubt is where kingdoms begin to die. Because once people question one truth, they begin questioning all of them. Meanwhile, beyond the palace walls, whispers of rebellion were already spreading through Aramoor like fire moving beneath dry wood. And Princess Elira had no idea that the man she was falling in love with stood far closer to that fire than he had ever admitted. By the time winter began loosening its grip on Aramoor, the lower gardens no longer felt forbidden to Elira. They felt necessary. Every night she moved silently through the sleeping palace, careful not to wake servants or alert the guards stationed near the eastern halls. She had memorized which corridors remained empty after midnight and which staircases creaked beneath pressure. The danger should have terrified her. Instead, it made her feel alive, because secrecy gives ordinary moments unusual intensity. A simple conversation begins to feel sacred when the entire world would forbid it. Kael always appeared before she arrived, as though he somehow knew the exact moment she entered the gardens. Sometimes he waited near the fountain, other times beneath the ivy-covered archways near the old statues. And every night, he seemed completely at ease inside a place where he absolutely should not have been. That realization slowly began bothering Elira more than she admitted. One evening, she finally confronted him about it. "You still haven't explained how you enter the palace grounds." Kael sat on the edge of the fountain, watching ripples move across the dark water. "You ask that question often, because your answers are always incomplete." A faint smile crossed his face. "Incomplete answers are safer. For who? For both of us." The response irritated her more than it should have. "You speak like someone hiding from the world." Kael looked toward the palace towers above them. "Aren't we both?" For a moment, Elira said nothing, because despite all the differences between them, she understood exactly what he meant. Kael hid from soldiers. She hid from expectations. Different cages, same feeling. The wind moved softly through the garden trees, while distant bells echoed across the city below. Somewhere beyond the palace walls, people were still awake in taverns and marketplaces, living lives untouched by royal rules. Elira envied them more each day. "You know what's strange?" she asked quietly. "What? I used to think the palace was the safest place in the world. And now?" She looked toward the towering walls surrounding the kingdom. "Now it feels like a prison." Kael's expression softened slightly. "That's because you've finally seen the bars." Those words stayed inside her long after the conversation ended, because deep down, she knew he was right. The palace controlled everything: where she walked, who she spoke to, even who she would someday marry. Every part of her future already belonged to someone else. And the more time she spent with Kael, the more unbearable that reality became. But what Elira still did not understand was this: Kael never spoke carelessly. Every conversation pulled her further from the kingdom without her realizing it. Slowly, patiently, like someone loosening stones beneath the foundation of a wall. One night, as rain hammered against the palace windows, Elira arrived at the gardens to find Kael unusually tense. He stood near the old marble statues, his eyes fixed toward the city beyond the cliffs. "You're late," he said quietly. "You sound worried." "I am." Elira stepped closer. "What happened?" Kael hesitated, then finally said, "The king executed 3 men this morning." Her stomach tightened. "For what?" "Speaking against increased taxes." "That can't be true." Kael looked at her sharply. "You really don't know what happens outside these walls, do you?" The words struck harder than she expected, because part of her feared he was right. Inside the palace, unpleasant truths rarely survived long enough to reach royal ears. Advisors softened bad news. Guards hid unrest. Servants whispered carefully. The crown preferred peace and appearance over truth and reality. "My father would never execute innocent people," she said quietly. "Innocent?" Kael repeated softly. "That depends on who writes the laws." Elira turned away angrily. "You talk about him like he's a monster." "No," Kael said. "I talk about him like a king." The rain intensified around them. For several seconds, neither spoke. Then Kael stepped closer. "You know what the people call him outside the capital?" Elira remained silent. "The Iron King. I've heard that name before." "Do you know why?" She shook her head. "Because iron doesn't bend," Kael said quietly. "And eventually, anything that refuses to bend, breaks." The words unsettled her deeply, not because they sounded false, because they sounded possible. That night, after returning to her chambers, Elira could not sleep. She kept replaying Kael's words over and over in her mind, while thunder rolled across the sea beyond her windows. And for the first time in her life, she wondered something dangerous. What if the kingdom she loved was not truly good? The thought terrified her. But once certain questions enter the mind, they do not leave quietly. Over the following days, Elira began paying closer attention to the palace around her, and slowly, the illusion began cracking. She noticed servants lowering their eyes whenever guards approached. She overheard nobles quietly discussing unrest in the outer provinces. She saw fear whenever King Edric entered a room, not respect, fear. Meanwhile, Kael continued becoming the only place where she felt honest emotions still existed. He listened when she spoke. He challenged her thoughts instead of controlling them. And most dangerously of all, he made her feel understood. One evening beneath the moonlight, Elira finally asked the question she had been avoiding for weeks. "What are you really doing here, Kael?" For the first time since meeting him, silence lingered too long before he answered. Then quietly he said, "Trying to change something." The cold wind moved through the gardens between them. Elira's heartbeat slowed uneasily. "What does that mean?" Kael looked directly into her eyes. "It means kingdoms like this don't stay standing forever." And somewhere far beyond the palace walls, the first true sparks of rebellion had already begun to burn. After Kael's warning about the kingdom, the meetings should have ended. That was the sensible choice, the safe choice. But emotions rarely care about safety. If anything, the danger surrounding their conversations only pulled Elira closer to him. Every whispered discussion beneath the moonlight felt forbidden in a way that made the rest of her life seem hollow by comparison. Days inside the palace became unbearable. Every royal dinner felt rehearsed. Every noble sounded dishonest. Every smile looked artificial. And worst of all, every hallway reminded her that her future no longer belonged to her. But at night, the gardens felt real. The secret meetings soon became routine, 3 nights each week, always after midnight, always hidden from the guards. Elira began wearing darker cloaks to avoid being recognized by palace servants if anyone crossed her path. Kael started choosing different locations inside the gardens each night, sometimes beside the fountain, sometimes beneath the old willow trees near the outer wall. At first she assumed he was simply cautious. Later she would realize he had been studying the palace, learning it, memorizing it. One cold evening, Elira arrived to find Kael staring toward the western towers of the castle. "You look troubled," she said softly. Kael glanced toward her, but did not smile this time. "There are more soldiers arriving in the capital. My father is increasing security." "Against who?" She hesitated. "There have been rumors of rebellion," Kael finished quietly. The word itself felt dangerous. Rebellion. Inside the palace, it was spoken like a disease. Something evil, something chaotic. But outside the palace walls, Elira was beginning to understand that people often rebelled only after feeling unheard for too long. Kael turned toward her fully. "Do you know what happens in the outer provinces?" "No, that's the problem." His voice was calm, but beneath it she sensed anger carefully restrained. "Villages are starving while nobles inside these walls celebrate feasts. Soldiers punish people for speaking against taxes they can no longer afford. Families disappear because someone accused them of disloyalty." Elira shook her head slowly. "You make the kingdom sound cruel." "No," Kael said quietly. "I make it sound honest." The words lingered painfully between them. For the first time in her life, Elira felt caught between 2 versions of reality. The kingdom she had been raised to believe in, and the kingdom Kael described. One built on order, the other built on fear, and she no longer knew which one was true. That uncertainty frightened her more than anything else, because people can survive pain more easily than confusion. "You hate him," she whispered eventually. Kael's eyes narrowed slightly. "Your father?" Yes, for several seconds he said nothing. Then finally, "I hate what power turns people into." The answer sounded careful, too careful, but Elira ignored that feeling, because by then her heart had already begun choosing what it wanted to believe. Weeks passed, winter faded, and Aramoor slowly moved towards spring, while tension spread across the kingdom like cracks beneath ice. Inside the palace, King Edric became colder than ever. More guards appeared throughout the halls. Noble families were questioned about possible disloyalty. Advisors spoke in quieter voices during council meetings. Even servants seemed nervous now, constantly watching doors before speaking. Something was happening beyond the palace walls, something growing, and though Elira did not fully understand it yet, Kael always seemed to know more than he admitted. One evening during dinner, King Edric suddenly looked toward his daughter. "You've been distracted lately." The entire table fell silent instantly. Elira forced herself to remain calm. "I'm simply tired. Tired people make careless decisions." His voice carried no warmth, only observation, only warning. For a brief moment, Elira wondered if he somehow knew, but the king returned his attention to the royal advisors without another word. Still, fear stayed inside her long after dinner ended. That night she rushed toward the gardens faster than usual. Kael noticed immediately. "What happened?" "I think my father suspects something." Kael's expression darkened. "Then this becomes dangerous." It already was. "No," he said quietly. "Now it becomes deadly." The cold certainty in his voice unsettled her. For the first time since meeting him, Elira saw genuine fear in his eyes. Not fear for himself, fear of losing control. "Maybe we should stop meeting," she whispered reluctantly. Kael stared at her for several seconds, and for the first time, the thought of losing him hurt more than the danger surrounding them. Then softly, he stepped closer. "Is that what you want?" "No." The answer appeared inside her instantly, and that terrified her most of all, because love does not arrive all at once. It happens quietly, choice by choice, moment by moment, until one day you realize someone has become part of your future without permission. Elira lowered her eyes. "I don't know what I want anymore." Kael gently lifted her chin. "That's what they've done to you here," he said softly. "They've taught you to fear your own desires." The words broke something inside her, because deep down, she knew they were true. And in that moment, standing beneath the moonlight, while the kingdom slept around them, Princess Elira crossed an invisible line she could never uncross. She kissed him, slowly, carefully, like someone stepping willingly toward danger. For several seconds, the world around them disappeared completely. No kingdom, no crown, no responsibilities, only the feeling of finally being seen, but hidden beyond the garden walls. Another pair of eyes had already seen them too, and before sunrise arrived over Aramoor, whispers of the princess's secret would begin moving through the palace like poison through blood. After the kiss in the garden, everything changed. Not immediately, not in obvious ways. The palace still looked the same. The silver towers still overlooked the sea. Servants still bowed their heads when Elira passed through the halls. King Edric still ruled with cold authority from the throne room. But inside Elira's mind, something had shifted permanently. Because once love enters a place built on control, obedience begins to weaken. Every moment inside the palace now felt heavier than before. The walls seemed narrower. The royal traditions felt meaningless. Conversations with nobles sounded empty and repetitive. Meanwhile, her nights with Kael became the only moments that felt alive. And Kael understood that. He understood it very well. The meetings in the gardens grew longer, more personal, more dangerous. Sometimes they spoke for hours beneath the trees, while the city slept below them. Other nights they simply sat together in silence beside the fountain, listening to rain strike the marble paths around them. But slowly, almost carefully, Kael began guiding their conversations toward the kingdom itself, toward power, toward freedom, toward rebellion. At first the ideas sounded harmless, questions more than arguments. Why should kings decide who people become? Why should fear be necessary for peace? Why should loyalty matter more than truth? Elira often challenged him, though less confidently each time. Without order, kingdoms collapse. Kael nodded calmly. And without justice? She had no answer, because he never argued emotionally. That was what made him dangerous. He spoke slowly, rationally, calmly, like someone offering truth instead of persuasion. One evening, while thunder rolled across the sea beyond Aramoor, Kael asked her a question she could not stop thinking about afterward. If your father ordered something cruel, would you still obey him? Elira looked away immediately. He's the king. That wasn't my question. Silence stretched between them. Finally she whispered, I don't know. Kael stepped closer beneath the flickering lantern light. That's the beginning, he said softly. The beginning of what? Thinking for yourself. The words should not have felt revolutionary, and yet they did, because inside the palace, obedience had always been treated as virtue. Questioning authority was considered weakness, or worse, betrayal. But Kael spoke about freedom as if it were something sacred, something worth sacrificing everything for. Over time, Elira began noticing how carefully he avoided discussing his own past. Whenever she asked where he came from, his answers stayed vague. Whenever she asked how he entered the palace, he changed the subject. Whenever she asked what he truly wanted, his expression became unreadable. At first she mistook that secrecy for pain. Later she would understand it differently. One cold night, Elira found Kael unusually tense again. He paced slowly beside the garden fountain, while shadows moved across his face. What happened? She asked. Kael stopped walking. The rebellion is spreading faster than expected. The word struck her immediately. Rebellion. Not rumors anymore, not whispers, something real. Elira's heartbeat quickened. You're involved with them. It was not a question. Kael did not deny it. For several seconds, only the sound of wind moved through the gardens. Then quietly he said, yes. Fear rushed through her chest instantly. Not because she hated him, because suddenly the danger surrounding them became real in a completely different way. You've been lying to me. No, Kael said calmly. I've been protecting you. Protecting me, she whispered. You're part of a rebellion against my father. Against the kingdom, Kael corrected quietly. There's a difference. Elira stepped backward. You said you wanted change. I do. You never said you wanted war. Kael's eyes darkened slightly. Nobody wants war. Then stop this. I can't. The answer came too quickly, too firmly. And for the first time since meeting him, Elira truly saw how committed he already was to something far larger than their relationship. You'd risk thousands of lives? She asked. Kael stared at her carefully. Do you think your father hasn't already done the same? The question hit harder than she expected, because deep down, she no longer fully trusted the answer. Kael moved closer again, lowering his voice. Your father believes fear creates peace, but fear only creates silence, and silence eventually breaks. You talk like the kingdom deserves to fall. No, he said softly. I talk like people deserve freedom. The conviction in his voice frightened her. Not because it sounded insane, because it sounded believable. That was Kael's greatest weapon. Not violence, not anger, belief. He spoke with the certainty of someone who genuinely thought he was saving the world. And people willing to destroy kingdoms often begin by convincing themselves they are heroes. "Elira," he said quietly, "have you ever asked yourself why the people fear your father more than they love him?" She remained silent, because she had started asking herself that exact question already. Kael reached into his coat slowly and removed a folded piece of paper. "A list of names," he explained. She unfolded it carefully beneath the lantern light. Dozens of names filled the page. Men, women, entire families. "What is this?" "People executed or imprisoned during your father's rule." Elira stared at the names silently. Some were marked with notes beside them. Spoke against taxes, accused of disloyalty, supported labor protests. Her chest tightened. This could be fake. Kael nodded once. It could. The uncertainty unsettled her even more, because she realized something horrifying in that moment. She no longer knew what truth looked like anymore. The kingdom had taught her one version of reality. Kael offered another, and somewhere between them, the ground beneath her beliefs was collapsing. Meanwhile, outside the palace walls, rebellion continued spreading across Aramoor. Secret meetings, hidden weapons, whispers in taverns, soldiers disappearing during patrols. And at the center of it all stood the man she loved. Though Princess Elira still believed she understood Kael's intentions, the truth was far darker than rebellion alone. Because Kael was not trying to change the kingdom anymore. He was preparing to destroy it. By early spring, fear had begun spreading through Aramoor faster than winter storms. At first, the rumors moved quietly. A burned supply wagon near the northern roads. Missing soldiers during late-night patrols. Royal messengers disappearing before reaching nearby provinces. Small incidents, easy to dismiss individually, but together they formed a pattern the kingdom could no longer ignore. Something was growing beneath the surface of Aramoor, and for the first time in decades, King Edric looked genuinely concerned. Inside the palace, the atmosphere changed completely. Guards doubled across the halls. Iron gates were locked earlier at night. Servants were questioned about unusual conversations. Even noble families were quietly investigated for possible connections to rebel groups. Trust itself seemed to be vanishing. Elira noticed it everywhere. People no longer spoke openly in corridors. Conversations ended the moment soldiers approached. Eyes constantly watched doors. The palace had begun feeling less like a royal home and more like a fortress preparing for war. One evening during council, Elira sat silently beside her father while military advisors discussed attacks happening outside the capital. A patrol near East Hollow was ambushed 3 nights ago, one commander reported grimly. "How many dead?" King Edric asked. 7. The room fell silent. Another advisor stepped forward. "There are also reports of rebel symbols appearing throughout the lower districts." King Edric's expression hardened instantly. "Then remove them." "We already have, Your Majesty, but more continue appearing." Elira remained quiet while the discussion continued around her, but inside, her thoughts spiraled uncontrollably, because every word confirmed the same terrifying truth. Kael had not exaggerated. The rebellion was real, and somehow, despite knowing that, she still wanted to see him. That frightened her more than the rebellion itself. Later that night, when Elira entered the gardens again, Kael was already waiting beneath the willow trees, but something about him felt different now, sharper, more distant, as though his attention was divided between her and something much larger. "You shouldn't keep coming here," she whispered, And yet you keep coming too. That's different. Why? Because if someone discovers us, they won't. The certainty in his voice unsettled her. How can you know that? Kael glanced briefly toward the palace walls surrounding them. Because not everyone inside this kingdom is loyal to your father. A cold feeling moved through her chest. There are rebels inside the palace? Kael did not answer directly, which was answer enough. For the first time since meeting him, Elira fully realized how deeply the rebellion had already spread, not just among villagers or angry workers, inside the kingdom itself, inside the palace, possibly even among the guards protecting the royal family. The realization made the entire world around her feel unstable. Kael, she whispered carefully, what exactly is your role in all this? He studied her face silently before answering. Would the answer change how you see me? The question terrified her because she did not know, and that uncertainty alone already felt dangerous. Kael stepped closer slowly. Elira, people are suffering outside these walls while your father tightens his grip on the kingdom. Do you really think peace built on fear can last forever? You keep saying that, she replied quietly. But rebellion will only create more death. Sometimes destruction is the price of freedom. The words hit her harder than expected, because there was no hesitation in his voice anymore. No softness, only conviction. And conviction without limits often becomes cruelty without realizing it. What if innocent people die? She asked. Kael remained silent for several seconds, then quietly. Innocent people are already dying. The answer chilled her, because part of her could no longer deny it. Still, another part of her, the part raised inside palace walls, wanted desperately to believe there had to be another way. But Aramoor had already moved beyond peaceful solutions, and both of them knew it. Over the following days, the rumors worsened. Rebel messages appeared painted across city walls during the night. The Iron King will fall. Freedom for Aramoor. The crown fears the people. Soldiers tore the messages down by morning, but new ones always appeared again before sunrise. The city itself began changing. Markets closed earlier. Citizens avoided speaking openly in public. And beneath everything lingered a feeling that something terrible was approaching, like the strange silence before lightning strikes. One afternoon, Elira overheard two servants whispering while cleaning the western halls. They say entire villages are hiding rebels now. My cousin saw soldiers arresting people near the harbor. They're saying war is coming. The moment they noticed Elira nearby, both servants fell completely silent. Fear instantly filled their faces, not disrespect, fear. And suddenly Kael's words returned to her again. The people fear your father more than they love him. That night, Elira stood alone on the palace balcony overlooking the city below. Aramoor still looked beautiful from a distance. Lantern lights flickered across the streets like scattered stars. The silver rooftops reflected moonlight softly across the capital. But now she understood something she had never seen before. Beauty can hide decay for a very long time. Behind those glowing streets, people were starving. Behind those palace walls, trust was collapsing. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the kingdom, rebels were preparing for something far bigger than protests, far bigger than fear. Meanwhile, hidden deep beneath the capital itself, secret meetings were already taking place. Maps of the palace spread across wooden tables. Guard patrols carefully memorized. Supply routes marked. Escape tunnels discussed. And at the center of those plans stood Kael. The man Princess Elira believed she knew. The man she believed she loved. The man who had already begun planning the exact night Aramoor would burn. For most of her life, Elira had believed her father was unshakable. Not kind, not gentle, but necessary. That was how the palace described King Edric. a ruler willing to carry burdens ordinary people could never understand, a king forced to make difficult choices for the survival of the kingdom. And for years, Elira accepted that explanation without question, because children naturally believe the worlds they are raised inside. But doubt changes everything once it enters the mind. After weeks of hearing Kael speak about suffering beyond the palace walls, Elira could no longer ignore the feeling growing inside her chest. Something about the kingdom no longer felt right. And worse, she was beginning to suspect it never had. The first crack appeared during a royal hearing held inside the Eastern Court. A farmer from the outer provinces had traveled to the capital to beg for reduced taxes after winter storms destroyed much of his village's crops. Elira watched quietly beside the throne, while the man spoke with trembling hands and exhausted eyes. "We cannot survive another season like this, Your Majesty," he pleaded. "People are already starving." King Edric listened silently, calmly, emotionlessly. Then he gave the same answer he always gave. "The kingdom requires sacrifice from everyone." The farmer lowered his head desperately. "With respect, Your Majesty, we have nothing left to sacrifice." For a brief moment, silence filled the enormous hall. Then the king spoke again. "If the crown lowers taxes now, weakness spreads. And once weakness spreads, kingdoms fall." 2 guards escorted the farmer away before he could say another word. Elira watched him disappear through the palace doors, while something cold settled inside her stomach. Because for the first time in her life, her father's words did not sound wise. They sounded cruel. That evening she confronted him privately inside the royal library. "You could have helped him." King Edric barely looked up from the documents covering his desk. "If I helped every desperate man who entered this palace, the kingdom would collapse within a year." He said his village is starving, then his village must work harder. The answer stunned her. "You don't even care." That finally drew the king's attention toward her. And though his expression remained calm, disappointment flickered briefly across his face. Compassion without discipline destroys rulers. They're people, not numbers. "And you think I don't know that?" he replied sharply. "Every decision I make protects this kingdom from chaos." Elira shook her head slowly. "Maybe people are rebelling because they're tired of being treated like enemies." The room instantly fell silent. The moment the words left her mouth, she regretted them. King Edric stood slowly from behind his desk. "Where did you hear that?" His voice had changed completely now, colder, more dangerous. Elira's heartbeat quickened. "I hear things." "What things?" "That people are afraid." The king stared at her for several long seconds before answering. "Fear keeps people obedient. And if obedience built on fear eventually breaks." The question hung heavily between them. For the first time in years, Elira saw genuine anger behind her father's eyes. "That sounds like something spoken by fools who have never seen war," he said quietly. "Peace survives because strong rulers make hard decisions. And if those decisions are wrong..." King Edric stepped closer. "Be careful, Elira." Not shouted, not emotional, which somehow made the warning feel far worse. Because the king rarely raised his voice, he never needed to. "You think ruling is cruelty because you've spent your life protected from reality," he continued calmly. "You see starving villagers and imagine kindness alone can save them. But kingdoms are not held together by kindness. Then what are they held together by?" The king answered instantly. "Control." The word echoed through the library like a closing door. Elira suddenly realized something terrifying in that moment. Her father truly believed that. Not as strategy, not as necessity, as truth. And perhaps even worse, part of him was probably right. Because Aramoor had remained powerful for decades under his rule. The kingdom was stable, its enemies feared it, Its people obeyed it. But now Elira could no longer ignore the question growing inside her mind. If fear creates peace, what happens when people stop being afraid? That night, she returned to the gardens shaken in a way Kael immediately noticed. What happened? Elira looked toward the palace behind them. I confronted my father, and, her voice lowered, I think he believes people exist to serve the kingdom, not the other way around. Kael remained silent for a moment, then quietly said, That's what power does to people. Elira sat beside the fountain slowly, exhaustion visible across her face. When I was younger, she whispered, I used to think he protected everyone, and now, she stared at the dark water rippling beneath the moonlight. Now I don't know who he's protecting anymore. Kael moved beside her carefully. The moment rulers fear losing power more than they fear hurting people, he said softly, they become dangerous. The words felt painfully true, because deep down, Elira knew her father was changing. Or perhaps she was finally seeing him clearly for the first time. Over the following days, the distance between father and daughter quietly widened. Conversations became shorter, more cautious. King Edric began watching her differently now, as though sensing something shifting beneath the surface. Meanwhile, Elira's trust in the crown continued eroding piece by piece. Every arrest inside the city strengthened her doubts. Every frightened servant confirmed them. Every conversation with Kael pulled her further away from the palace she once called home. And slowly, without fully realizing it, Princess Elira began doing something far more dangerous than falling in love. She began choosing sides, because once loyalty starts breaking inside the heart, betrayal is never far behind. The closer Aramoor moved toward chaos, the more Elira clung to Kael. It no longer felt like a choice. He had become the only person who spoke to her honestly, the only person who listened when she questioned the kingdom, the only place where she no longer felt trapped inside the role of a princess. And Kael understood exactly how powerful that made him. Their meetings in the gardens became deeper after Elira's confrontation with her father. The conversations no longer revolved around distant ideas or harmless philosophy. Now they spoke openly about the future, about escape, about what might happen if the kingdom truly collapsed. One cold night, thick fog covered the palace gardens, while distant thunder rolled across the sea. Elira found Kael waiting beside the old fountain, his expression more serious than usual. You look afraid, she whispered. Kael remained silent for a moment before answering. Things are moving faster than expected. Her chest tightened immediately. The rebellion? He nodded. Elira, once this begins, there won't be a way to stop it. The words hung heavily between them. For weeks she had sensed something approaching, but hearing him say it directly made the danger suddenly real. Not rumors, not whispers, war. Elira stepped closer slowly. Then leave with me. Kael looked surprised. We could disappear, she continued quickly. Far from Aramoor, far from the rebellion, far from my father. For a brief second, something softened in Kael's expression. Or perhaps she only imagined it. You would abandon the kingdom? He asked quietly. Elira looked toward the palace towering above them. I don't even know if this kingdom deserves saving anymore. The words shocked even her, because months earlier, she could never have imagined saying something like that aloud. Kael studied her carefully beneath the fog-covered moonlight, then softly, You really mean that? I'm tired of feeling like my life belongs to everyone except me. The wind moved through the gardens around them, while silence settled between both of them. Then Kael reached for her hand. Elira, if things become dangerous, I need you to trust me completely. A strange unease moved through her chest. What does that mean? There may come a moment when you'll have to make a choice. Between what? Kael's eyes drifted toward the palace gates visible beyond the trees. Between the kingdom and freedom, the answer frightened her. Not because she didn't understand it, because she did. Deep down, she already knew what he was asking without him saying the words directly. And worse, part of her had already decided. "Elira," Kael said quietly, "your father will never surrender power peacefully. If rebellion reaches the capital, the city will become a battlefield. You're talking about war. I'm talking about survival." She pulled her hand away slightly. "Innocent people will die." Kael's expression hardened. "Innocent people are already dying." Again that answer. Again that certainty. Elira hated how convincing it sounded. Because every time she tried defending the kingdom now, memories returned to her immediately. The starving farmer, the terrified servants, the arrests, the fear inside the city. And slowly, the line between justice and rebellion had started blurring inside her mind. Kael stepped closer. "I don't want Aramoor destroyed," he whispered. "I want it free." The sincerity in his voice wrapped around her thoughts like poison disguised as comfort. And Elira wanted desperately to believe him. Because love often survives by believing the version of people we hope is true, not the version standing directly in front of us. Kael lowered his voice further. "If the rebellion reaches the capital, there's one thing only you can do." Her heartbeat slowed uneasily. "What?" "The Western Gate." Elira stared at him silently. The Western Gate was one of the oldest entrances to the capital, rarely used except during trade deliveries. Heavy iron locks sealed it each night, and only palace officials knew the guard rotations surrounding it. Kael saw the realization forming behind her eyes. "Elira, no." He stepped closer carefully. "Listen to me. You want me to betray the kingdom. I want to prevent a massacre." The words came instantly, prepared, as though he had rehearsed them long before this conversation. "If the rebel forces storm the walls directly, thousands will die," Kael continued. "But if the Western Gate opens, the city can be taken before full battle begins." Elira's mind raced violently. "You're asking me to hand them the capital. I'm asking you to save lives." The manipulation was subtle, almost invisible, and that made it far more dangerous. Because Kael never forced ideas onto her. He guided her toward them slowly until they felt like her own thoughts. "You said you loved me," he whispered softly. The words broke through her hesitation instantly. For several seconds she could barely breathe. Because somewhere deep inside herself, she realized the terrible truth. If Kael asked her to choose between him and the kingdom, she no longer knew which one she would choose. Tears gathered in her eyes. "If this goes wrong, it won't. How can you know that?" Kael moved closer until only inches separated them. "Because once the people take control," he said softly, "Aramoor can finally become something better." Elira wanted to believe him, wanted to believe love could lead somewhere beautiful instead of somewhere terrible. And perhaps that was her greatest mistake, not trusting Kael, trusting the future he promised. Finally, after a long silence, Elira whispered the words that would someday destroy an entire kingdom. "What do you need me to do?" Kael closed his eyes briefly, almost like someone hearing victory arrive. Then quietly, he explained the plan, the guard schedules, the signal fires, the exact night the rebellion would move against the capital. And hidden beneath the shadows of the royal gardens, Princess Elira made a promise she could never take back. A promise built from love, a promise built from doubt, a promise that would soon drown Aramoor in fire and blood. Because sometimes the most dangerous betrayals begin not with hatred, but hope. After the promise in the gardens, Elira stopped sleeping peacefully. Every corridor inside the palace now felt haunted by what she had agreed to do. At night she imagined the western gates opening beneath darkness. She imagined rebel soldiers flooding into the capital. She imagined fire spreading across the city. And each time fear overwhelmed her, Kael's words returned again. "This will prevent a massacre. This will save lives." She repeated those sentences constantly now, almost like prayers. Because guilt becomes easier to survive when people convince themselves they are doing the right thing. Meanwhile, King Edric intensified security throughout the capital. More soldiers arrived daily. Watchtowers remained lit through the night. Travel between provinces became restricted, and rumors spread that the king had begun searching for spies already hidden inside the palace. That rumor terrified Elira more than anything else. Not because she feared for herself, because deep down, she knew it was true. There was a spy inside the palace, and she had unknowingly helped him. One evening, while royal advisors argued inside the throne room about growing unrest across the kingdom, a wounded captain arrived carrying terrible news. "Your Majesty," he said breathlessly, "another weapons convoy was attacked near Black Hollow." King Edric's expression darkened instantly. How many knew the route? Only military command. Silence filled the room. Elira felt cold immediately, because she understood what the king understood. Someone inside the kingdom was leaking information. One advisor stepped forward nervously. "The rebels are receiving help from somewhere inside the capital." King Edric slowly rose from his throne. "Then find the traitor." The words echoed through the hall with terrifying calmness. Not anger, not panic, certainty. Elira kept her face perfectly still, but inside her heartbeat pounded violently. For the first time, she fully realized how close everything stood to collapse. One mistake, one suspicion, one careless movement, and the truth about her meetings with Kael would destroy them both. That night, Elira rushed toward the gardens through cold rain and heavy wind. Kael stood waiting beneath the trees, but before she could speak, he already knew something was wrong. "What happened?" "My father knows there's a spy." Kael's expression remained strangely calm. He suspected that already. Elira stepped closer urgently. "You don't understand. Security is tightening everywhere. Guards are searching servants, questioning soldiers. They won't find anything." "How can you be so certain?" Kael hesitated only slightly, because unlike Elira, he already knew exactly how deeply the rebellion had infiltrated the palace. "There are people inside these walls who want change too," he said carefully. The answer unsettled her. "How many?" "Enough." The coldness of that single word frightened her. Enough. Not one spy, not two. An entire hidden network. Suddenly the palace around Elira no longer felt secure at all. It felt compromised, vulnerable, as though invisible cracks already ran through the kingdom while nobody truly understood how deep they went. Kael stepped closer beneath the rain. "Elira, listen to me carefully. Once this begins, things will move quickly." "When?" "Soon." That's not an answer. It's the only one I can give. Again secrecy, again careful half-truths. And for the first time since meeting him, doubt flickered briefly inside her heart. Not about the kingdom, about Kael himself. "You still hide things from me," she whispered. Kael looked at her silently. "Because some truths are dangerous. I'm already risking everything for you." His expression softened slightly then. "You think I don't know that? Then stop treating me like I'm still outside this." For several seconds he remained silent while rainwater dripped from the trees around them. Then quietly, he said, "There's someone close to the king feeding us information." Elira froze. "A royal advisor?" Kael shook his head slowly. "Higher access than that." Fear spread through her chest instantly. There were very few people inside the palace with direct access to military routes. security changes, and council decisions, which meant the spy stood dangerously close to the throne itself. "Who is it?" she whispered. "I can't tell you." "Why?" "Because if you're captured, the less you know, the safer you are." The answer sounded logical, and yet something about it felt wrong. Kael always knew exactly how much truth to reveal. Enough to earn trust, never enough to expose himself completely. Still, Elira pushed her doubts aside again, because love often teaches people to ignore the warnings their instincts scream the loudest. Over the following days, paranoia spread across the palace like illness. Servants disappeared for questioning. Soldiers accused each other of disloyalty. Even nobles avoided private conversations now, terrified someone nearby might secretly support the rebellion. Meanwhile, unknown to everyone around him, Kael moved freely through hidden passages beneath the capital, alongside other rebel leaders. Maps of the palace covered underground tables. Guard schedules were updated constantly, and among all those plans, one detail mattered more than any other: Princess Elira. Not because Kael loved her, because she was useful, though Elira still could not see that truth yet. One night, while walking through the palace corridors alone, Elira overheard two guards speaking quietly near the western tower. "They say the king doesn't trust anyone anymore. Would you? There's a traitor somewhere inside these walls." The second guard lowered his voice further. "I heard even members of the royal household are being watched now." Elira's blood ran cold. For a brief moment, panic nearly consumed her completely, because if her father discovered the truth before the rebellion moved, Kael would die. And perhaps, despite everything, she would too. That night she returned to her chambers, unable to breathe properly. For the first time, the full weight of what she had done crashed over her completely. She had betrayed the kingdom already, not later, not when the gates opened. Now, every secret meeting, every piece of information, every lie told to her father, the betrayal had already begun. And somewhere far beneath the capital, hidden in darkness beneath Aramoor itself, the final preparations for war were almost complete. The night Aramoor fell began quietly. No thunder, no warning bells, no armies marching openly toward the capital. Only silence, a strange, unnatural silence that settled across the kingdom like the final breath before drowning. Inside the palace, most of the royal court had already gone to sleep. Lanterns burned dimly along the marble corridors, while guards patrolled the walls beneath the cold midnight wind. Everything looked normal, and that was exactly the problem, because destruction rarely announces itself before arriving. Princess Elira stood alone inside her chambers, staring through the window toward the western side of the capital. Far below, the city lights flickered softly beneath darkness, while fog rolled through the narrow streets near the harbor. Somewhere beyond those walls, Kael was waiting. The thought tightened her chest painfully. For days she had tried convincing herself there was still time to stop everything, still time to tell her father the truth, still time to run away before the rebellion reached the capital. But every possible future now ended in blood. And deep down, she already knew something horrifying. The moment she agreed to help Kael, the kingdom's fate had already changed. A soft knock suddenly echoed against her chamber door. Elira turned sharply. "Who is it?" "It's me, Kael." Her heartbeat stopped instantly. She rushed toward the hidden passage behind her bookshelf, the same secret corridor Kael had used for weeks to move unseen through the palace. When the stone doorway opened, he stepped from darkness wearing a black cloak soaked with rain. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Elira whispered, "You shouldn't be here." Kael removed the hood slowly. It's time. 2 words. Cold. Final. Fear spread through her immediately. Kael, the rebel forces are already moving toward the capital. Her breathing became uneven. You said there would still be negotiation. There was. And? Kael's eyes hardened slightly. Your father refused. Of course he did. King Edric would never surrender control willingly. Not to rebels, not to fear, not to anyone. Outside, distant bells suddenly echoed faintly across the city. Not alarm bells, signal bells. Kael heard them too. It begins now. Elira looked toward the window in terror. We can still stop this. No, Kael said quietly. We can't. Then he stepped closer. Elira, I need you. The words shattered what remained of her hesitation. Because despite the fear, despite the doubt, despite the growing horror inside her chest, she still loved him. And Kael knew it. The western gate guards changed positions in less than 15 minutes, he continued carefully. Once the shift happens, the path will stay unprotected long enough for our people to enter. Our people, not rebels, not soldiers, our people. The language itself made betrayal feel smaller somehow, more justified. Elira closed her eyes briefly. If innocent people die, they won't, Kael interrupted quickly. The city will surrender before fighting begins. The certainty in his voice sounded rehearsed now, too smooth, too prepared. But Elira ignored the warning again. Because love makes people protect hope long after logic has collapsed. Kael gently took her hands. When this ends, we leave together, he whispered. No more kingdoms, no more lies, just freedom. For one desperate moment, she believed him completely, and that belief destroyed everything. The journey toward the western gate felt unreal. The palace corridors remained silent, while Elira moved beside Kael through hidden passageways beneath the castle. Torches flickered weakly across ancient stone walls, while cold air drifted through underground tunnels forgotten by most of the kingdom. These passages had once been built as emergency escape routes generations earlier. Now they were being used to destroy the kingdom itself. You knew these tunnels from the beginning, Elira whispered suddenly. Kael glanced toward her briefly. Yes, the realization hit painfully. All those nights in the gardens, all those secret meetings. He had never been trapped outside the palace. He had been studying it, learning it, preparing. Still, she kept walking, because by then, turning back felt impossible. Eventually they reached the final iron door, leading toward the western gate chambers. Beyond it stood only a handful of guards, responsible for controlling the massive lock system protecting the capital entrance. Kael stopped walking. This is the point where everything changes. Elira's hands trembled. I'm afraid. For the first time that night, genuine softness appeared in Kael's expression. So am I. Then he kissed her gently, and while she closed her eyes for that brief moment of comfort, Kael quietly reached for the concealed dagger hidden beneath his cloak. The first guard died without making a sound. Elira heard the body hit the stone floor before she fully understood what had happened. Her eyes opened instantly. Blood spread across the ground beneath the torchlight, while Kael caught the second guard from behind, covering his mouth before driving the blade into his throat. Everything happened too fast, too violently, too easily. Elira stumbled backward in horror. Kael, it had to happen. The calmness in his voice terrified her more than the killing itself. You said nobody would die, nobody important. The words struck like ice through her chest. For the first time, she truly saw him clearly. Not the man from the gardens, not the dream of freedom she loved. Something colder, something capable of terrible things without hesitation. Outside the walls, horns suddenly echoed through the darkness. Then came the sound of movement, hundreds of footsteps. The rebellion had arrived. Kael turned toward the enormous gate mechanism, while blood still dripped from the dagger in his hand. "Elira," he said quietly, "open the gates." And standing beside the bodies of dying guards beneath the heart of the kingdom, Princess Elira realized she no longer knew whether she was helping save Aramoor or destroying it forever. For several seconds, Elira could not move. The bodies of the guards lay motionless across the stone floor, while blood slowly spread between the cracks beneath them. Torchlight flickered against the walls, illuminating Kael's face in brief flashes of shadow and gold. He looked completely calm. That frightened her most. Not the violence, not the blood, the calmness. Outside the gates, the sound of approaching footsteps continued growing louder. Hundreds of voices echoed faintly through the darkness beyond the walls, while distant signal horns cried across the sleeping capital. The rebellion had reached Aramoor, and the kingdom still had no idea. "Elira," Kael repeated quietly, "we're out of time." Her breathing became uneven. "You killed them. They would have raised the alarm. You promised this wouldn't happen." Kael wiped the blood from his dagger with disturbing ease. "I promised we could change the kingdom." The answer chilled her, because suddenly she understood something terrible. Kael had never lied directly. He simply allowed her to believe whatever made obedience easier. Another horn echoed outside, closer now, more urgent. Kael moved toward the massive gate mechanism built into the stone wall beside them. Heavy iron chains connected to enormous wooden gears controlled the western entrance, protecting the capital. Once opened, there would be no reversing it. "Elira," Kael said firmly, "if the rebel forces attack the walls instead, thousands die by sunrise." The manipulation still sounded convincing, even now, especially now, because fear makes people desperate to believe terrible choices are necessary. Elira stared at the dead guards again. They looked young. One could not have been older than 20. And suddenly the reality of rebellion no longer felt noble or philosophical. It felt horrifyingly human, messy, violent, irreversible. Then screams suddenly echoed faintly from somewhere above the gate chambers. Elira froze. Kael's expression darkened instantly. "The fighting has started earlier than expected." "What?" He moved quickly toward the staircase leading upward. Some of the rebel groups must have attacked before receiving the signal. Panic flooded through her chest. "You said the city would surrender peacefully. That was the plan. The plan, not the truth." Outside, more screams erupted through the night. Then came the sound that shattered what remained of Elira's hope entirely. Fire bells, loud, violent, endless. Kael cursed under his breath. They started burning sections of the city. Elira stared at him in horror. Why would they do that? But Kael already knew the answer. Because rebellions are easy to control before violence begins. Afterward, they become storms. Another explosion thundered somewhere beyond the western walls. Dust fell from the ceiling while terrified voices echoed above them through the palace streets. Aramoor was collapsing, and it had only just begun. Kael grabbed Elira's wrist suddenly. "We need to open the gate now." "No." The word escaped her instantly. Kael turned sharply. "What? This isn't what you promised. Elira, you said this would save lives. It still can. There are already people dying." Kael stepped toward her slowly, frustration finally appearing beneath his calm exterior. "If the rebel forces remain trapped outside the walls, the fighting becomes worse." "How do you know that anymore?" she whispered. For the first time since meeting him, Kael looked uncertain, only briefly. But Elira saw it. and suddenly she realized something terrifying. Even he no longer fully controlled what was happening. Outside the gate chambers, the sounds of chaos spread rapidly through the capital now. Screaming civilians, clashing steel, running footsteps. The city had awakened into nightmare. Far above them, palace alarm bells finally began ringing across Aramoor. Too late, far too late. Kael moved toward her again. Elira, listen carefully. Once the gates open, this ends faster, and if I refuse, silence. The question lingered heavily between them. Then Kael answered quietly, "Don't do this." Not anger, not cruelty, something worse, disappointment, as though her hesitation itself had become betrayal. The realization broke something inside her, because suddenly she understood the terrible truth about love and revolution. Both demand loyalty, both punish doubt. Outside, another massive explosion shook the capital violently. This time smoke began drifting down through the upper stairwells above them. The city was burning. "Elira," Kael said firmly, "open the gate." Tears filled her eyes. This was never about freedom, was it? Kael's expression hardened. "It was always about freedom." "No," she whispered. "It was about winning." For several seconds, neither moved. Then distant shouting suddenly erupted from the corridor beyond the chamber. Royal guards. They had discovered the dead bodies. Kael reacted instantly, drawing his dagger again. Elira, now. Everything around her blurred together. The screams, the fire bells, the smoke, the bodies. The man she loved standing before her like someone she no longer recognized. And beyond the gates, thousands waiting to enter the capital. Then the chamber doors burst open. 3 royal guards rushed inside with swords drawn, stopping instantly at the sight before them. For one frozen moment, nobody moved. The guards recognized the princess immediately. Then one of them looked toward Kael, toward the blood, toward the gate mechanism, and understanding filled his face. "Traitors," he whispered. Kael attacked first. Steel crashed violently through the chamber, while Elira stumbled backward in terror. One guard fell almost immediately, but the second drove Kael against the stone wall, while the third rushed toward the alarm lever near the gate controls. Kael shouted desperately, "Elira!" She looked toward the lever. If the guard reached it, the entire capital would know the western gate had been compromised. Rebel forces outside would become trapped. The rebellion might fail. Everything would end here. And somehow, despite the horror surrounding her, part of her still wanted to save Kael. That was the cruelest part of all. Even after the blood, even after the lies, even after watching the kingdom burn, love still remained. Trembling violently, Elira grabbed a fallen sword from the floor. The guard near the alarm lever turned toward her in shock. "Princess!" She struck him before he could finish speaking. The blade entered clumsily, horribly. Nothing like stories, nothing heroic. The guard collapsed instantly beside the mechanism, blood spreading across the stone beneath him. Silence followed. Kael stared at her. The surviving guard stared at her, and Elira stared at her own shaking hands in complete horror. Because in that moment, Princess Elira understood something she could never escape for the rest of her life. The kingdom was not burning because of Kael anymore. It was burning because of her. Then slowly, the western gates of Aramoor began to open. The moment the western gates opened, Aramoor stopped being a kingdom. It became a battlefield. Cold night air rushed through the gate chambers as the massive iron doors slowly separated with a deafening groan of chains and stone. Beyond them, hundreds of rebel fighters surged forward from the darkness like a black tide swallowing the capital whole. Torches burned through the fog, weapons glimmered beneath moonlight, and above the city, Smoke already climbed toward the sky. Elira stood frozen beside the dead guard she had just killed, while the reality of what she had done settled over her like poison. Kael moved immediately. "Go," he ordered the rebel fighters entering through the gates. "Secure the lower districts. Cut access to the eastern barracks before the royal army regroups." The rebels obeyed him without hesitation, not like followers, like soldiers following a commander. And suddenly Elira realized something she should have understood long ago. Kael had never merely been part of the rebellion. He led it. The discovery hollowed something inside her. "How long?" she whispered weakly. Kael turned toward her briefly. "What? How long have you been planning this?" For the first time since entering the gate chambers, genuine exhaustion crossed his face. "Long before I met you." The truth hurt more than the blood surrounding them. Because suddenly every memory in the gardens felt different. Every smile, every conversation, every touch. Had any of it been real? Kael stepped closer quickly, sensing the doubt forming inside her. "Elira, listen to me." "No," she whispered, backing away. "Did you ever actually love me?" The question lingered painfully between them, while screams echoed through the burning city outside. Kael hesitated, only for a second, but sometimes a single second reveals more truth than words ever can. Then suddenly another explosion thundered through the capital above them. One of the palace towers had caught fire. The rebellion had reached the royal district. Kael's attention shifted instantly toward the sound. "We don't have time for this." The answer shattered her completely, because he had not said yes. Far above the gate chambers, chaos consumed the palace. Royal guards rushed through smoke-filled corridors, while servants fled in panic. Fires spread across the lower city districts, where rebel forces clashed violently with soldiers loyal to the crown. The rebellion had become war, and war no longer cared about innocence. Inside the throne room, King Edric stood surrounded by commanders shouting desperate updates from across the capital. The western gate has fallen. Rebels are inside the city. The southern districts are burning. We've lost contact with half the outer patrols. The king listened silently while panic spread across the room around him. But unlike everyone else, King Edric did not look afraid. He looked furious. "Seal the eastern palace entrances," he ordered coldly. "Move archers onto the northern towers. Any rebel found inside royal grounds dies immediately." One advisor stepped forward nervously. "Your Majesty, there may still be time to negotiate." King Edric slowly turned toward him. "Negotiate." The single word carried terrifying calmness. "They attacked sleeping civilians," the king continued quietly. "They burned their own city, and you speak to me of negotiation." No one answered, because deep down, everyone inside the throne room understood the horrifying truth. The rebellion had already crossed a line from which there was no return. Another guard suddenly burst into the hall breathlessly. "Your Majesty, Princess Elira is missing." For the first time that night, something shifted in King Edric's expression, only slightly, but enough. "Missing," he repeated slowly. "We cannot locate her anywhere inside the palace." Silence filled the throne room instantly, and in that terrible silence, understanding arrived. The king did not ask questions, did not deny the possibility, because somewhere deep down, he already knew the rebellion could never have entered the capital without help. Knew someone close to the throne had betrayed the kingdom. And perhaps worst of all, he knew exactly who. Far below the palace, Elira and Kael moved through hidden tunnels, while the sounds of war echoed above them. Smoke drifted through cracks in the stone ceilings, while distant screams carried faintly through the underground passageways. The city was dying. "Elira," Kael said carefully, "once we reach the harbor, ships are waiting." She barely heard him. Her thoughts remained trapped inside the throne room she imagined above them. Her father, the palace, the kingdom, everything she had destroyed. "How many people are going to die tonight?" she whispered. Kael avoided her eyes. "As many as necessary." The answer made her stop walking immediately. Kael turned back toward her. "What?" "That's exactly how my father talks." The words struck him harder than she expected. For a moment, genuine anger flickered across his face. "You think this is the same? I think both of you are willing to sacrifice innocent people for what you believe." Kael stepped toward her sharply. "This kingdom was broken long before tonight, and now you're breaking what's left." For several seconds neither spoke, while distant firelight flickered through the cracks above them. Then Kael lowered his voice dangerously. "You don't understand what happens if the rebellion fails." "No," Elira whispered painfully. "I think I finally do." Suddenly horns echoed violently through the tunnels overhead. Royal war horns. Kael's expression darkened instantly. The king's army is regrouping. Far above them, King Edric had mounted his horse beneath the burning palace banners, while loyal soldiers gathered around him inside the eastern courtyard. The old king looked terrifying beneath the firelight. Not broken, not defeated, furious. Smoke rolled across the capital, while screams echoed from every direction. But King Edric's voice cut through the chaos with absolute clarity. "Tonight they call us tyrants," he shouted to the soldiers surrounding him. "Tonight they call themselves liberators." He drew his sword slowly. "But look around you." The burning city illuminated his face in orange light. Liberators do not slaughter sleeping guards. Liberators do not burn their own people alive. Liberators do not hide behind shadows. The soldiers tightened their grip on their weapons, and for the first time that night, fear began changing into rage. King Edric raised his sword toward the burning capital. "They wanted war," he said coldly. "Now they will have it." Then the Iron King rode directly into the flames, consuming his kingdom. The city no longer sounded human as Elira and Kael moved through the underground tunnels beneath Aramoor. The world above them had transformed into something monstrous, an endless storm of screaming, collapsing stone, clashing steel, and fire. The rebellion had become chaos, and chaos no longer belonged to anyone. Not the king, not the rebels, not even Kael. Smoke drifted through cracks in the tunnel ceilings, while dust fell around them with every distant explosion above. Somewhere overhead, entire sections of the capital were burning. Elira could smell it now. Burned wood, burned cloth, burned flesh. The realization made her stomach twist violently. "This was never supposed to happen," she whispered. Kael kept walking ahead of her without slowing down. War never goes according to plan. The coldness of the answer terrified her. Because weeks ago, Kael would have spoken differently. Softer, more carefully. He would have tried comforting her. Now he sounded like someone who had already accepted the destruction around them long before tonight began. And suddenly, for the first time since meeting him, Elira truly began seeing him clearly. Not the man from the gardens, not the quiet stranger beneath moonlight, but the person hidden underneath all of it, a man who had prepared himself emotionally for blood long ago. "How many people knew?" she asked quietly. Kael glanced back. Knew what? That this would happen. He hesitated briefly. Enough. Again that word. Enough. Not regret, not sorrow, only calculation. Elira slowed her pace. The tunnel walls around her suddenly felt suffocating. "When you first met me," she whispered carefully, "was it part of the plan?" Kael stopped walking. For several seconds he said nothing, and in that silence, she already understood the answer. "Elira, was it?" Kael exhaled slowly. At first, yes. The words struck harder than any blade ever could. Elira stared at him in complete silence, while distant screams echoed faintly above them through the stone. At first, she repeated weakly, "You were close to the throne, close to the palace. I needed information. Needed, not wanted. Needed." The tunnel suddenly felt colder. Every memory inside the gardens twisted painfully in her mind now. The first meeting beside the fountain, the conversations, the kisses, the promises. Had any of it been real? Kael stepped toward her carefully, but then things changed. Did they? Yes. She looked at him with tears slowly filling her eyes. "How do I know that's true?" Kael opened his mouth to answer, but no words came, because for perhaps the first time that night, even he no longer knew which parts of himself had been real, and that uncertainty frightened him more than the war above them. Elira backed away slowly. "You used me. No, you manipulated me into betraying my own kingdom. I showed you the truth about your kingdom. You showed me the version of truth that benefited you." The words landed heavily between them. Kael's expression hardened. "You think your father was innocent in all this?" "No," Elira whispered painfully, "but neither are you." Above them, another violent explosion shook the tunnel walls. Dust rained from the ceiling while distant screams erupted louder than before. Aramoor was dying, and suddenly Elira realized something horrifying. Both sides believed they were saving the kingdom, and both sides were destroying it. Her father ruled through fear because he believed control prevented chaos. Kael embraced violence because he believed destruction created freedom. Different methods, same certainty, same willingness to sacrifice people for an idea. And trapped between both of them stood the ruins of an entire kingdom. Elira covered her mouth as tears finally fell. "I killed someone." The words barely escaped her throat. For the first time since the gates opened, the reality hit her completely. The guard near the alarm lever, the shock in his eyes, the blood, the way he collapsed. Kael moved toward her gently. "Elira, don't." Her voice broke instantly. "I told myself I was helping people." "You were." "No," she whispered. "I was helping you." Silence followed, because deep down, both of them knew she was right. Kael had spoken endlessly about freedom, justice, revolution, but none of those things were why Elira betrayed the kingdom. She did it because she loved him, and that truth horrified her, because love had not made her noble, it had made her blind. Suddenly footsteps echoed somewhere deeper within the tunnels behind them. Both turned instantly. Royal soldiers, searching beneath the capital. Kael reacted immediately, pulling a dagger from beneath his cloak. "We need to move," but Elira no longer followed him. Instead, she stared at the weapon in his hand, the same weapon that killed the guards, the same weapon he carried calmly through all this destruction. "You came prepared for slaughter from the beginning." Kael's patience finally cracked slightly. "This is war." "No," Elira whispered, shaking her head. "This is obsession." The footsteps behind them grew closer. Voices echoed faintly through the tunnels now. Kael grabbed her arm urgently. "Elira, if they find us, your father will execute both of us." At the mention of her father, something shifted inside her. Not loyalty, not forgiveness, understanding. For weeks she had blamed King Edric for everything wrong with the kingdom, and perhaps many of those accusations were deserved. But now she realized another terrible truth. The rebellion had needed the king to look monstrous, because hatred makes betrayal easier. Kael had slowly isolated her from everything else, until he became the only voice she trusted, the only reality she believed. And somewhere along the way, she stopped thinking for herself entirely. That realization shattered her. The footsteps grew louder. Kael pulled her harder. We have to go now." Elira looked at him one final time, and for the first time since the night they met beneath the garden moonlight, she felt afraid of him. Not because he was evil, because he genuinely believed everything he had done was justified. And people like that are capable of destroying entire worlds without ever feeling guilt. Then somewhere above them, through the burning city of Aramoor, the royal war horns sounded again, closer this time. The Iron King was winning back his kingdom. The war horns above the tunnels changed everything. Kael heard them too, and for the first time that night, genuine fear crossed his face. Not fear of death, fear of losing. The realization struck Elira immediately. For weeks, Kael had spoken about freedom, justice, and saving the kingdom. But now, standing inside the collapsing tunnels beneath Aramoor, while soldiers searched for them above, she finally understood what truly mattered to him. Victory, nothing else. The rebel leader moved quickly through the underground passage, pulling Elira behind him, while distant footsteps echoed closer from the darkness. "We need to reach the harbor before the eastern roads close," he said urgently. Elira no longer trusted him enough to answer. Her thoughts spiraled violently now, replaying every conversation they had ever shared, every carefully chosen word, every half-truth. Every moment he guided her further away from her father, further away from the kingdom, further toward him. And suddenly the pattern became horrifyingly clear. "You planned all of this from the beginning," she whispered. Kael kept moving. "At first I planned the rebellion." "No," Elira said sharply. "You planned me." That finally made him stop. The tunnel fell silent except for the distant sounds of battle raging overhead. Kael turned toward her slowly. "Elira, you knew exactly what to say to me." His expression hardened slightly. "You think I manipulated your feelings. You manipulated my loneliness." The words landed like a blade between them, because deep down, both knew she was right. Kael had not forced her into betrayal. He had simply found the emptiness already inside her and filled it carefully until she depended on him more than the world around her. The realization made Elira feel physically sick. "You made me believe I was choosing freedom. You were." "No," she whispered painfully. "I was choosing you." Kael stepped closer. "And what's wrong with that?" "Everything." The answer screamed inside her mind. But the worst part was this: a piece of her still loved him anyway. That was the cruelty of real betrayal. It does not erase emotions instantly. Sometimes the heart keeps loving people long after the mind understands the damage they caused. Another explosion thundered somewhere above them. Dust rained from the tunnel ceiling, while frightened voices echoed in the distance. Royal soldiers were getting closer. Kael lowered his voice. "Elira, listen carefully. The kingdom cannot survive this anymore." She stared at him in disbelief. "You still think this is about saving the kingdom?" Kael's expression darkened. "You've seen what your father built, and now I'm seeing what you built." For several seconds neither moved. Then Elira asked the question she feared most. "What happens after the rebellion wins?" Kael answered immediately. "We rebuild." "How?" "We remove the old power structures, dissolve the royal bloodline, create a government controlled by the people." The words sounded noble, almost inspiring, but Elira finally understood the truth hidden beneath them. How many people would die before that happens? Kael remained silent, and silence itself became the answer. Elira shook her head slowly. "You don't want freedom," she whispered. "You want control." Kael's patience finally broke. "Control?" he snapped. "Do you think kingdoms collapse peacefully? Do you think power simply disappears because people ask politely?" His voice echoed harshly through the tunnels now. For decades your father ruled through fear, while villages starved and people disappeared. And now suddenly everyone wants to pretend violence is unforgivable because the crown is bleeding instead. The anger in his eyes startled her, not because it looked false, because it looked completely genuine. Kael truly believed himself righteous, and that made him far more dangerous than ordinary monsters. You know the worst part? He continued bitterly. I never wanted you involved in this. Elira stared at him. What? You made things complicated. The words hollowed something inside her completely. Not because they sounded cruel, because they sounded honest. For the first time all night, Kael finally stopped speaking like a revolutionary leader. Now he sounded exhausted, like a man trapped inside the consequences of his own choices. I was supposed to use you, he admitted quietly. Get close to the palace, learn the guard rotations, understand the hidden passages. Elira could barely breathe, but then I met you. Silence settled heavily between them, and for one terrible moment, she realized something even more painful than manipulation. He probably had loved her, in his own broken way, but love had never mattered enough to stop him, because Kael loved his revolution more. Far above them, the city of Aramoor continued burning. The screams sounded fewer now, not because the fighting had ended, because people were dying. Suddenly, another rebel fighter emerged from deeper within the tunnels, breathing heavily. Kael, he said urgently, the eastern districts are lost. The king's forces pushed us back from the palace. Kael's face tightened instantly. What about the harbor? Still under our control, but not for long. The rebel fighter finally noticed Elira standing nearby. For a brief second, something strange crossed his expression. Not respect, recognition, as though he already knew exactly who she was, and perhaps worse, what she had done. The others are waiting, the rebel continued. We need to leave now. Kael nodded once. The fighter disappeared back into the darkness. Elira stared after him silently, then slowly turned back toward Kael. How many people knew about me? Kael avoided her eyes. The answer terrified her before he even spoke. Most of the leadership. A cold numbness spread through her entire body. The rebel leaders had known about her, known she was helping them, known she betrayed the kingdom. And somewhere in hidden rooms beneath the city, they had probably spoken about her not as a person, but as an asset, a weapon, a weakness inside the royal bloodline. Tears filled her eyes again. I was never part of this, she whispered. Kael stepped closer carefully. You were part of changing the world. No, she said softly. I was part of destroying it. Another silence followed. Then, somewhere far above the tunnels, a massive horn echoed across the burning city. Long, powerful, victorious. Kael's face changed instantly. Elira recognized the sound too. The royal army had reclaimed the palace. The royal horns echoed through the burning city like the voice of judgment itself. Long, cold, victorious. Kael heard them and immediately understood what they meant. The palace had not fallen. King Edric still lived, and the rebellion, despite all its fire and blood, was beginning to lose control. For the first time since the gates opened, uncertainty appeared fully across Kael's face. Not fear of death, fear that everything he sacrificed might fail. The tunnel around them trembled as another distant explosion shook the city above. Dust drifted through the cold underground air, while screams echoed faintly from the streets of Aramoor. But now the sounds were changing. The chaos was becoming organized again. Royal soldiers were pushing back. Elira watched Kael carefully. Weeks ago, she would have mistaken his determination for strength. Now she finally saw the truth hidden beneath it. Obsession. A man so consumed by the idea of changing the world that he stopped caring what he destroyed to reach it. And suddenly she understood something horrifying. Her father and Kael were reflections of each other. One used fear to preserve power, the other used destruction to seize it. Both believed the suffering around them was necessary, and caught between those two men, an entire kingdom had burned. Kael turned sharply toward the deeper tunnels. "We leave now." Elira didn't move. "You're running." Kael looked back immediately. "I'm surviving. You said you would rebuild the kingdom. We can't rebuild anything if we die here." The answer sounded practical, logical, but it shattered the final illusion she still carried inside her heart. Because in that moment she finally realized the terrible truth. Kael had always planned for the possibility of failure. Escape routes, hidden tunnels, ships waiting at the harbor. He had prepared for survival long before the rebellion even began. But the people dying above them, the civilians, the rebel fighters, the guards, the city itself, none of them had escape plans, only him. Elira's voice trembled. "How many people believed in you?" Kael hesitated. "Enough." Again that word. Enough. Always enough. Enough rebels. Enough sacrifice. Enough death. Enough lies. Elira looked at him with tears burning in her eyes. "And how many of them are dying right now while you prepare to flee?" Kael's expression hardened. "You think staying here changes anything?" "No," she whispered painfully, "but leaving proves everything." The rebel leader stepped closer, frustration finally breaking through his calm exterior. "You think your father wouldn't do the same?" "Maybe he would," Elira said. "That's why this kingdom was doomed from the beginning." The words struck both of them harder than expected, because deep down, they both knew she was right. Aramoor had been collapsing long before tonight. The rebellion did not create the rot inside the kingdom. It only tore away the illusion hiding it. But revolutions built on rage rarely create peace. They simply replace one wound with another. Above them, the sounds of battle intensified again. Steel clashed violently, somewhere near the palace district, while royal war horns continued echoing across the city. Kael suddenly grabbed Elira's arm. "We're out of time." This time she pulled away. "No." His eyes narrowed instantly. "What are you doing?" "I'm not leaving with you." For several seconds, the tunnel went completely silent. Even the distant war sounds seemed to disappear beneath the weight of those words. Kael stared at her, as if unable to fully process what she had said. "Elira, you were right about one thing," she whispered. "The kingdom was broken." Then tears fell down her face. "But you broke everything else." Kael stepped closer slowly. "I did this for people like you." "No," she said quietly. "You did it for yourself." The words finally wounded him. She saw it happen. A brief crack beneath the certainty he carried for so long. Because despite everything, some part of him truly believed he was a hero. And perhaps that was the greatest tragedy of all. Kael lowered his voice. "If you stay here, your father will execute you." "Maybe he should." The answer stunned him completely. Elira looked toward the faint firelight leaking through cracks in the tunnel ceiling. Somewhere above them, Aramoor continued dying because of choices she helped make. The weight of that truth crushed her now. The guards, the fires, the gates, the betrayal, all of it. Love had not freed her. It had turned her into a weapon. And the worst part was this. She had handed herself over willingly. Suddenly more footsteps echoed through the tunnels nearby. Closer than before, royal soldiers were searching beneath the city now. Kael reacted immediately. "We have to move now." But Elira remained still. "No, Elira, I'm done running." For the first time all night, real panic entered Kael's voice. "You don't understand what they'll do to you." I understand exactly what I deserve." The words echoed painfully through the darkness, because betrayal always demands payment eventually, and no crown, no revolution, no love can protect people from the cost forever. Kael stared at her silently for several long seconds. Then finally, quietly, "I never wanted this for you." Elira almost laughed through the tears. "That's the problem," she whispered. "You never saw me as my own person at all." Another silence, heavy, final. Then suddenly the tunnel entrance behind them exploded open as royal soldiers stormed into the passageway with raised torches and drawn swords. There, voices thundered through the darkness. Kael reacted instantly, pulling his dagger while reaching for Elira at the same time. But she stepped away from him, away from the rebellion, away from the man she once believed would save her. Royal soldiers surrounded the tunnel rapidly, while smoke drifted around the torchlight like ghosts rising through the underground ruins. Then finally, through the crowd of armored guards, one figure slowly emerged. King Edric, the Iron King himself, covered in ash, blood staining his armor, eyes cold as winter. And the moment he looked at his daughter, Elira understood something terrifying. Her father already knew everything. The tunnel fell completely silent the moment King Edric stepped forward. Even the soldiers stopped moving. Torchlight flickered across the stone walls, while smoke drifted slowly through the underground passage, wrapping around the king like shadows following him through the ruins of his kingdom. He looked older than Elira remembered, not weak, never weak, but tired in a way she had never seen before. Ash covered his armor, blood stained the edges of his gloves. A long cut crossed one side of his face, where rebel steel had nearly reached him during the battle above. Yet despite everything, his eyes remained cold, controlled, the eyes of a man who refused to break even while his world burned around him. King Edric looked first toward Kael, then toward the dead tunnel guards behind them, then finally toward his daughter. And in that terrible silence, Elira realized there was nothing left to hide. The king already understood the truth. "You," he said quietly to Kael, "are the one who opened my gates." Kael stepped slightly in front of Elira, dagger still in hand. "I did what your people were too afraid to do themselves." King Edric's expression never changed. "You burned your own city. I freed it." The king slowly glanced upward toward the distant sounds of screaming still echoing through Aramoor above them. "Freedom built on corpses," he said coldly, "is just another form of tyranny." The words hit Kael harder than expected, because deep down, he knew they were true. For a brief moment, neither man spoke, and standing between them, Elira suddenly saw the full tragedy of everything that had happened. Her father, Kael, two men who hated each other completely, yet both willing to destroy countless lives for what they believed was necessary. The Iron King ruled through fear because he believed control protected the kingdom. Kael embraced revolution because he believed destruction could save it. Different paths, same certainty, same blindness. And suddenly Elira understood something neither of them ever truly had. People suffer most when powerful men become convinced they alone understand the future. King Edric finally looked directly at his daughter. "Did you help him?" No anger, no shouting, that somehow made the question worse. Elira felt tears gathering instantly. Yes, several soldiers lowered their eyes immediately. Even Kael became still, because hearing the truth spoken aloud made everything irreversible. The king remained silent for several seconds, then quietly, "Why?" The question broke something inside her completely, because despite everything, she still wanted him to understand. "I thought," her voice trembled, "I thought we were saving people." King Edric's eyes closed briefly, not in rage. Pain, small, almost invisible, but real. "You opened the gates to rebels," he said softly. "The city is burning. I know, hundreds are dead." The words struck her like knives, because deep down, she already feared the number was far worse. Elira lowered her head completely. "I know." For a moment, nobody moved inside the tunnel except smoke drifting through the torchlight. Then Kael stepped forward. "She acted because your kingdom failed her." King Edric looked toward him slowly. "No," the king replied quietly. "She acted because you found her loneliness and used it." The words landed with terrifying precision. Kael's jaw tightened instantly. "You isolated her from the world," the king continued coldly, "then convinced her betrayal was freedom. She chose this herself. She chose you." Silence crashed through the tunnel, because both men knew the king had spoken the truth. Elira felt her chest tightening painfully. For weeks she blamed her father for controlling her life, and perhaps he had. But Kael had simply replaced one form of control with another. One ruled through duty, the other through emotional dependence. And somewhere between both of them, she lost herself completely. Kael turned toward her desperately. "Elira, don't listen to him." The words sounded almost pathetic now, smaller than before, because for the first time, his certainty was failing, not because the rebellion lost, because she no longer believed in him. "Elira," Kael whispered, "we can still leave this place together." Together. The word once sounded beautiful. Now it sounded empty. She looked at him carefully. The man from the gardens, the stranger who made her feel seen, the revolutionary who promised freedom, the leader who opened the kingdom to fire, and perhaps the cruelest part of all, she knew some part of him truly loved her, but not enough to stop, never enough to stop. Tears rolled down her face. "I don't even know who you are anymore." Kael's expression broke slightly then. For the first time all night, he looked lost, not like a rebel leader, not like a revolutionary, just a man realizing too late that victory had cost him the only thing he genuinely cared about. Then suddenly another explosion thundered somewhere above the tunnels. Dust rained from the ceiling while soldiers tightened their grip on weapons instinctively. The city was still burning, and time was running out. King Edric finally drew his sword slowly. The sound of steel echoed sharply through the underground chamber. "Arrest him." Royal soldiers advanced immediately. Kael raised his dagger, backing toward the deeper tunnels. "Elira," he said urgently, "come with me now." For one terrible moment, she almost did. Because love does not disappear instantly. Even after betrayal, even after blood, part of her still remembered the gardens, the moonlight, the promises, the feeling of finally being understood. And perhaps that was the hardest truth of all. People can recognize destruction clearly, and still ache for it anyway. But then Elira looked upward toward the faint orange glow leaking through the cracks above them. Her kingdom was burning. Because of him, because of her, because everyone involved believed their pain justified what came next. And suddenly she understood the only thing left to do. Slowly, Princess Elira stepped away from Kael, toward the soldiers, toward her father, toward judgment. Kael stared at her in disbelief. "Elira," her voice shook violently. "I'm done choosing people who destroy the world and call it necessary." Then the royal soldiers charged forward, and the man she once betrayed her kingdom for disappeared into darkness beneath the burning city of Aramoor. By dawn, the fires had finally begun to die. Smoke drifted across the ruins of Aramoor, like ghosts refusing to leave the dead behind. Entire streets still burned faintly beneath collapsing rooftops, while exhausted soldiers searched the wreckage for survivors. The kingdom had survived the night. But survival and victory are not the same thing. From the palace balcony, Princess Elira looked over the capital she barely recognized anymore. The silver towers of Aramoor were blackened with ash. Sections of the outer districts had collapsed entirely. The western market still smoldered beneath rising smoke, while funeral bells echoed softly through the cold morning air. The city sounded quieter now, not peaceful, empty, as though the kingdom itself had become too exhausted to scream anymore. Elira stood motionless beneath the gray morning sky, while guilt settled heavier inside her chest with every passing second. Hundreds were dead, perhaps more. Royal soldiers, rebel fighters, servants, citizens, people who had never even known her name. And every time she closed her eyes, she saw the western gates opening again. She heard the screams. She saw the blood on the stone floor beneath the tunnel torchlight. Most of all, she remembered the guard she killed, because some choices never truly end after they happen. They simply continue living inside the people who made them. Behind her, the palace doors opened quietly. King Edric entered the balcony slowly. For several moments, neither spoke. Father and daughter stood overlooking the broken kingdom together, while cold wind carried smoke through the morning air around them. Finally, the king spoke. The harbor was secured before sunrise. Elira understood immediately what he meant. Kael. If he escaped, the king continued quietly, he won't escape for long. A strange pain tightened inside her chest at the thought. Not because she wanted him free, because despite everything, part of her still mourned him, or perhaps mourned the version of him she once believed existed. King Edric stepped beside her near the balcony edge. The city will recover. Elira stared at the ruins below. Will it? The king remained silent, because deep down, he knew some damage never fully heals. Not kingdoms, not people, not trust. The morning wind moved through the burned palace banners above them, while distant bells continued echoing across the capital. Eventually Elira whispered, "I betrayed you." The words felt smaller, spoken aloud, than the weight they carried inside her. King Edric looked toward the ruined city, rather than at her. Yes, no denial, no comfort, only truth. Tears filled her eyes again. "I thought I was doing the right thing." The king exhaled slowly. "That's what frightens me most." His answer stunned her. Finally he looked directly at his daughter. "Evil rarely believes itself evil, Elira. Most destruction begins with people convinced they are saving the world." The words struck painfully deep, because they described Kael perfectly. But they also described the king himself, and perhaps that was why his voice carried such quiet exhaustion now. For the first time in her life, Elira saw something inside her father she had never noticed before. Regret. Small, buried deeply beneath years of control and discipline, but real. "You were right about some things," King Edric admitted quietly. Elira stared at him in surprise. "The kingdom became too afraid of its own ruler," he continued. "Fear kept order, but it also created hatred." The confession felt almost unreal coming from him. "But Kael was wrong too," the king said coldly. "Men who promise paradise through violence always leave ruins behind them." Below the balcony, workers moved through the destroyed streets, carrying bodies beneath gray sheets. The sight made Elira feel sick again. "This happened because of me." King Edric remained silent for a long moment. Then finally, "No." She looked at him sharply. "You opened the gates," he said. "But kingdoms do not collapse from one mistake alone." The wind carried ash across the balcony between them. This kingdom was already wounded long before tonight. For several seconds, neither spoke, because both understood the truth now. Aramoor had not nearly died because of one villain. It nearly died because too many people allowed pain, fear, and certainty to replace understanding. Kael believed destruction would create freedom. King Edric believed control would create peace, and both men lost sight of the people trapped beneath their ideas. Elira lowered her eyes. What happens to me now? The question lingered heavily between them. Princess, traitor, daughter. All three identities stood together now, impossible to separate anymore. King Edric looked toward the city before answering. If I punish you publicly, the kingdom sees weakness inside the crown, and if you don't, the kingdom sees betrayal without consequence. The cold logic of royalty returned instantly, and strangely, Elira no longer hated him for it. Because for the first time, she finally understood the burden he carried all these years. Not just power, fear of losing everything. Still, understanding did not erase the damage he caused, nor the damage she caused. Some wounds remain even after blame becomes complicated. The king turned toward the balcony doors. You will leave the capital before sunset. Elira froze. What? You will live in exile beyond the southern provinces. Officially, the kingdom will say Princess Elira died during the rebellion. The words hollowed her chest instantly. Not execution. Something quieter. Erasure. You're sending me away. King Edric's voice remained calm. I am saving your life. Tears filled her eyes completely now. Because somehow, that hurt more than punishment would have. The king paused before leaving. Then quietly, without turning back, he said, I loved your mother once more than this kingdom. Elira stared at him silently. And if someone had asked me to burn the world for her, he continued softly, I might have believed it was justified too. For the first time in her life, the Iron King sounded human. Then he walked away, leaving Princess Elira alone on the balcony, while smoke rose from the dying kingdom below. And as the last morning light spread across the ruins of Aramoor, she finally understood the true price of betrayal. Not death, not exile, but surviving long enough to remember exactly how everything was lost. 3 months after the fall of Aramoor, the kingdom officially declared the rebellion defeated. The fires were extinguished, the damaged districts rebuilt, the remaining rebel leaders captured or executed, and across the capital, royal messengers spread the same story to every province. Princess Elira had died during the attack on the palace. A tragic victim of the rebellion, she unknowingly became trapped inside. The kingdom mourned her publicly, then slowly forgot her. That was how kingdoms survived, by burying uncomfortable truths beneath cleaner stories. Far south of the capital, beyond the cliffs and forests surrounding Aramoor, a lone carriage moved quietly through the rain toward exile. Inside sat a young woman dressed in dark traveling clothes instead of royal silk. No crown, no servants, no kingdom, only silence. Princess Elira stared through the rain-covered window, while memories haunted her endlessly. The gardens, the gates, the fire, Kael. Sometimes she hated him, sometimes she missed him. And perhaps the cruelest part of all, sometimes she still loved the version of him she once imagined existed. The carriage eventually stopped beside a small roadside inn near the border provinces, just after nightfall. Elira entered quietly, keeping her hood lowered, while travelers drank and spoke softly around the firelit room. Nobody recognized her. To the world, Princess Elira no longer existed. And maybe that was mercy. She sat alone near the corner fireplace while storm rain battered the windows outside. For the first time in months, the world around her felt almost ordinary. No war, no palace, no rebellion, just strangers hiding from rain. Then the inn door suddenly opened. Cold wind rushed through the room. and Elira's entire body froze instantly. A man stepped inside wearing a dark traveler's cloak soaked with rainwater. For one terrible second, her heart convinced itself it was Kael, but it wasn't. The stranger removed his hood slowly and approached the innkeeper. Elira. The sound of her name shattered the room inside her mind, not because she recognized the voice, because nobody here should have known who she was. Slowly she turned. The man standing near the doorway was older than Kael, scar across his jaw, royal military posture, and in his hand he carried a silver ring marked with the royal crest of Aramoor, one of her father's personal messengers. Fear tightened instantly inside her chest. The messenger approached carefully while the inn's fire crackled softly between them. Then quietly, he placed a sealed letter on the table before her. The king asked that this be delivered only if the rebellion truly ended. Elira stared at the royal seal without moving. Her hands trembled slightly as she broke it open. Inside waited only a single piece of paper, and written across it, in her father's unmistakable handwriting, were 7 words. Kael was never the rebellion's true leader. The world around her seemed to stop. Elira looked up instantly. What? The messenger lowered his voice. The man you knew answered to someone else. Cold fear spread through her body. No, the real leader disappeared before the palace was reclaimed. The room suddenly felt impossible to breathe inside. Kael, the man who destroyed the kingdom, manipulated her, led the rebellion, had not even been at the top. He had been following orders too. Elira's thoughts spiraled violently. Then another realization struck her like ice. If the true leader still remained alive, then everything that happened in Aramoor might only have been the beginning. The messenger reached into his coat slowly. Elira's heartbeat stopped. He removed another object carefully and placed it beside the letter, a small silver pendant, simple, worn, familiar, Kael's pendant. The exact one he always carried beneath his cloak. Elira stared at it in horror. What does this mean? The messenger's expression darkened. We found it this morning. Where? Silence. Then quietly, inside the king's private chambers. The fire cracked loudly beside them. Rain hammered the windows harder outside. And suddenly Elira understood the final terrifying truth. The rebellion had never truly ended, because someone inside the kingdom, someone close enough to enter the royal chambers unseen, was still working from the shadows, watching, waiting. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the ruined kingdom of Aramoor, another war had already begun. And perhaps that is the cruelest truth about betrayal. It rarely begins with hatred. It begins with loneliness, with doubt, with the desperate hope that someone finally understands you. But the world's most dangerous people are often not those who want to destroy kingdoms. They are the ones who convince others destruction is love. Because by the time Princess Elira realized the difference, Aramoor was already burning. And somewhere beyond the ashes of the fallen kingdom, the shadows were still waiting.